The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place. Across its many star systems, countless species battled for dominance, control, and survival. Some species were ancient, their civilizations spanning millions of years. Others, newly risen from the shadows of their home planets, were still testing their strength. Among these, one group had earned a reputation that spread across the stars: the Vrothians. They were fierce, powerful, and most importantly, feared by all. The Vrothians were a cold, calculating race of beings. They had conquered countless worlds, leaving nothing but destruction in their wake. Their military strength was unmatched, and their technology was centuries ahead of anything the galaxy had ever seen. No one dared challenge them, for it was known that crossing the Vrothians meant certain death. They had become the very embodiment of fear. A legend whispered in every corner of the galaxy: the Vrothians will never be stopped. But they hadn't counted on one thing: humans. At first, the Vrothians didn't pay much attention to Earth. It was just another insignificant planet, tucked away in a distant corner of the galaxy. In their eyes, the humans were primitive, far too weak to pose any real threat. Earth was a backwater planet, untouched by the wars that raged across the stars. They thought the humans were too focused on their own problems to ever become a force worth reckoning with. However, the Vrothians made a fatal mistake. They underestimated humanity. It started when the Vrothian Empire decided to expand their territory. They had already conquered planets far and wide, and now they set their sights on Earth. The humans, as they saw it, were a small, insignificant species who would easily bow to their power. The Vrothians were confident that they would sweep through the planet with ease, bringing it into their fold. But something went wrong. The moment the Vrothian ships entered Earth's atmosphere, they were met with resistance. It was unlike anything they had ever encountered before. The humans were not weak. In fact, they were not like any species they had previously fought. The Vrothians tried to launch their attack, expecting the humans to crumble under their superior weapons and technology. But the humans fought back with a ferocity and determination that shocked the invaders. The first battle was brutal. It didn't take long for the Vrothians to realize that Earth wasn't as helpless as they had thought. The humans had developed weapons of their own, advanced enough to harm the Vrothians' ships and troops. But it wasn't just technology that made the humans so formidable. It was their willpower. The humans fought for survival, for their homes, for their families. The Vrothians, on the other hand, fought for conquest and control. They had no concept of what it meant to truly protect something, to fight for something that mattered beyond the glory of war. The humans had a reason to fight that the Vrothians didn't understand. And that was their mistake. The Vrothians believed they were invincible. They thought their advanced weaponry and unmatched strength would be enough to crush the humans. But what they didn't realize was that humanity had a power of its own, a power that no amount of technology or strength could defeat: the spirit to never give up. As the war raged on, the Vrothians began to lose. Their ships were shot down one after another, their soldiers defeated at every turn. The humans had no intention of backing down, no matter the cost. The Vrothians soon found themselves fighting on Earth's terms, and they were losing. The battle for Earth had turned into a battle for survival. The Vrothians were desperate. They began to use every trick in their book, unleashing their deadliest weapons and employing ruthless tactics. But the humans fought back with even greater resolve. They adapted quickly, learning how to fight the Vrothians' technology and turning it against them. It wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about the hearts and minds of the humans, their relentless drive to protect their home. But as the days passed, the Vrothians started to question something. How could they be losing to such a primitive species? How could they, the most feared empire in the galaxy, be outmatched by humans who had only just begun to understand the true power of warfare? The answer was simple, but it was something the Vrothians could not accept. Humans didn't fight like other species. They didn't fight for glory or for control. They fought for something far greater, something the Vrothians couldn't even begin to comprehend: the survival of their kind and the protection of everything they held dear. The humans' strength came not from their weapons, but from their hearts, and that was something the Vrothians could never understand. The war that had begun with the Vrothians assuming their superiority was now one they were losing. Earth had become a battleground, but it was more than that. It was a statement, a declaration to the universe that humanity would never back down, no matter the odds. As the Vrothians continued their assault, they began to realize that their arrogance had led them to their greatest mistake. They had underestimated the humans, and now it was too late to turn back. The hidden threat that humanity posed to the galaxy was no longer a secret. The Vrothians had underestimated the strength, the courage, and the spirit of the human race, and now they would pay the price. As the first battles unfolded, the galaxy began to notice. The Vrothians were no longer seen as invincible, and humanity, the species once thought weak and insignificant, was beginning to rise. What had started as a simple conquest of a single planet had now turned into a galaxy-shaking event. The humans had proven they were not to be underestimated, and they were not going to stop until they had taken their place among the stars. The first few days of the war had shaken the Vrothian forces to their core. Despite their vast technological superiority, they were being pushed back by a species they had once regarded as insignificant. The humans had made it clear that they were not going to surrender without a fight. Earth, once thought to be an easy target, had become a battleground where the Vrothians' might was slowly being eroded. Commander Zoreth, leader of the Vrothian fleet, paced back and forth on the bridge of his flagship, his mind racing. He couldn't understand how this was happening. His fleet was vast, his soldiers trained for battle, and his weapons were designed to obliterate any enemy. How could they, the Vrothians, the most feared empire in the galaxy, be losing to humans? We underestimated them, Commander, his lieutenant said, standing at attention. Zoreth shot him a furious look. Underestimated them. They're humans, a primitive species barely capable of space travel. We should have crushed them in the first hour. Perhaps they are not as primitive as we believed, the lieutenant replied cautiously. Their tactics are unlike anything we've encountered. They're not just fighting back. They're learning, adapting faster than we anticipated. Zoreth clenched his fists, the anger building within him. The Vrothians had always been a symbol of unyielding power, and now they were being challenged by a species that should have been no threat at all. But what angered him more than anything was the realization that their intelligence, their superiority, meant nothing in the face of the humans' sheer determination. On Earth, the humans had managed to rally their forces in a way the Vrothians couldn't have predicted. They weren't just using their advanced technology. They were using their creativity, their ingenuity, and their adaptability to outsmart the Vrothians at every turn. The battlefields had turned into a deadly game of cat and mouse, with the humans always one step ahead. Back on Earth, the situation was just as dire for the Vrothians. They had expected to crush humanity quickly, but instead, they found themselves fighting in the dense forests of South America, the deserts of Africa, and the frozen tundras of the Arctic. Wherever they went, the humans were there, fighting with a ferocity that only increased with each battle. Their soldiers were relentless, never giving an inch. In the heart of a ruined city, a group of human resistance fighters, men and women from every corner of Earth, gathered around a holographic map, strategizing their next move. "We can't let up," said Captain Elena Torres, the leader of the resistance. "The Vrothians think they can break us, but we're going to show them they've made a huge mistake. They thought we were weak, but they've just awakened a beast they don't understand." Her voice was filled with conviction, and her eyes burned with the determination of a leader who would stop at nothing to protect her people. "We've got the upper hand now. We've figured out their weak spots, and they're starting to feel the pressure." Another resistance fighter, Lieutenant Mark Davis, nodded. "We've taken down 3 of their command ships in the past 48 hours. We're hitting them where it hurts, but we need to keep the pressure on." Elena's hand hovered over the map, zooming in on the coordinates of the Vrothian fleet. "We take out their remaining supply ships, and their fleet will starve. They'll have no choice but to retreat. The plan was risky, but Alina and her team were used to taking risks. It was what had kept them alive. The Vrothians were formidable, yes, but they weren't invincible. They had shown their weakness, and humanity was ready to exploit it. As the resistance fighters prepared for their next strike, the Vrothian fleet continued to struggle against the relentless human counterattacks. The humans had learned their enemies' tactics and were now exploiting every mistake the Vrothians made. From sabotage to guerrilla warfare, the humans were using every tool at their disposal to weaken the Vrothian forces, and with every passing hour, their chances of victory grew stronger. Meanwhile, the Vrothians were beginning to realize the true extent of their mistake. It wasn't just their military might that had failed them. It was their inability to understand what they were up against. The humans weren't like the other species they had conquered. They didn't give up, no matter how hopeless the situation seemed. They fought for survival, for their families, for their planet. The Vrothians had come to Earth believing it would be an easy conquest, but they were wrong. And now, as their fleet was slowly being picked apart, they found themselves on the defensive. The humans had proven they were far from helpless. Meanwhile, deep within the Vrothian fleet, Zorath stood at the communication station, glaring at the reports that continued to pour in. Another ship had been destroyed. Another squadron had failed. His soldiers were losing faith, and he could feel the tide of the war turning. "Sir," the lieutenant said, "we've lost contact with several of our battle groups. There's no word from the assault fleet on Earth's moon. We've been outmaneuvered at every turn." Zorath clenched his teeth. "This will not stand. We will not be defeated by these humans." He turned to his second-in-command. "Prepare for a final assault. We will not retreat. We will take the fight directly to their cities. If we have to level their world to break their spirit, then so be it." But as the Vrothians prepared for their final push, they were still unaware of the greatest surprise humanity had been keeping from them. The humans' secret weapon. The humans had been preparing something the Vrothians couldn't even imagine. They weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to end the war, to show the Vrothians that they had made a grave mistake. With every victory, with every setback, the Vrothians suffered. Humanity had been building something that would change the course of the war. And the time was almost here. As the Vrothian forces gathered for their final assault, the humans had already set their trap. The galaxy's most feared species would soon learn that humans were not to be underestimated. And soon, it would be the Vrothians who would regret challenging the humans. The Vrothian fleet had begun to gather their forces for a final assault, believing they could crush the remaining human resistance with one decisive strike. The humans, battered and bruised from months of fighting, were running out of time and resources. But they had something the Vrothians didn't: an unshakable will to survive, and a hidden weapon the aliens could never have anticipated. Back on Earth, Captain Alina Torres and Lieutenant Mark Davis stood at the control center, watching as the Vrothian ships gathered in orbit. The weight of the coming battle hung in the air like a storm, but they didn't flinch. They were ready. "We can't let them breach our defenses. If they get past Earth's atmosphere, we'll lose our last stronghold," Alina said, her voice steady, but her eyes betraying the worry she felt. Mark nodded. "We've been preparing for this moment since the first day they arrived. We've got the upper hand now. We've learned how they fight, how they think. We're not going down without a fight." But there was more to it than that. The humans weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to show the universe what humanity was capable of. The Vrothians had underestimated them, and now they would learn the cost of that mistake. On the Vrothian flagship, Commander Zorath stood with his arms crossed, staring at the massive fleet below. His officers were briefing him on their plans for the final strike, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The humans had somehow been anticipating their every move, and despite their superior technology, the Vrothian forces had struggled to gain ground. "This will be the end of them," Zorath muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Once we crush their last stronghold, they'll know their place. We will burn their cities, break their resistance, and leave no survivors. His second-in-command, a stoic officer named Crows, spoke up. We have intelligence that suggests their remaining forces are organizing a counteroffensive. They're ready for us, sir. I suggest we move quickly. Zorath's eyes narrowed. They are desperate, but it will make no difference. We'll crush them, just as we've crushed every other species that dared to stand against us. As the Vrothians prepared for their final strike, the humans were preparing something far more powerful. Across Earth, across hidden bases, and in secret labs, teams of scientists, engineers, and strategists had been working on the most daring plan yet. They had discovered the Vrothians' biggest weakness, one they'd been blind to throughout the war, and they had created a weapon to exploit it. Alina and Mark were part of a select few who knew about the weapon. It wasn't just a physical tool, it was a combination of strategy, technology, and the relentless spirit of humanity. They had worked day and night to create a device that could potentially turn the tide of the war in one decisive moment. The humans had learned from their mistakes. They had adapted. They had evolved. And now, it was time for the final confrontation. The trap is set. As the Vrothian fleet made its move toward Earth, the humans executed their plan with precision. They had lured the Vrothians into a false sense of security by offering little resistance, but all the while, they had been preparing for this exact moment. Their secret weapon, hidden beneath the surface of Earth's moon, was ready for activation. The weapon was a planetary-scale disruptor, something that would make the Vrothians' superior technology useless. It wasn't just a physical weapon, but a field that would short-circuit their ships and disable their systems. The Vrothians were masters of energy weapons, but they had never faced anything like this. As the Vrothians closed in, Alina and Mark stood side by side, watching the holographic map of Earth's orbit. The alien fleet was moments away from reaching their defenses. The air was thick with tension, but there was something else, something that filled them with hope. "We've got one shot at this," Alina said, her voice calm but determined. "Once we fire this weapon, we won't be able to control the outcome. If it works, we take them down. If not, we'll be facing them head-on." Mark gave her a sharp look. "We're not going to fail. Not after everything we've been through. This is our time." They exchanged a brief glance before turning their attention back to the holographic display. They were ready. The final stand. As the Vrothians neared Earth's atmosphere, the first wave of their assault fleet began to fire their weapons. But just as the massive energy beams were about to strike Earth, something unexpected happened. The disruptor activated. The Vrothian ships shuddered as their systems began to fail. Their weapons cut out, their engines sputtered, and their shields flickered. A wave of confusion swept through the Vrothian fleet as they tried to regain control. Zorath cursed, his eyes widening with realization. No, this can't be happening. What have they done? The humans had done the impossible. They had turned the tables on the Vrothians, using their own technology against them. And now, for the first time since the war began, the Vrothians were no longer the hunters. They were the hunted. The humans launched their counteroffensive, striking the vulnerable Vrothian ships with precision and fury. The battle was chaotic, but humanity's sheer determination, their adaptability, and their will to survive had given them the edge. The Vrothians, for the first time, found themselves on the defensive. But the fight was far from over. Zorath was furious, but he wasn't ready to admit defeat. "Bring everything we have," he shouted. "We will not go down without a fight." But it was too late. The humans had already proven that they were no longer the underdogs. They had fought back with everything they had. And the Vrothians, for all their power, couldn't stop them. A new era. As the Vrothian fleet began to retreat, their ships crippled and their morale shattered, the humans knew the war was far from over. But for the first time, they had hope. They had won a crucial battle, and they had shown the universe that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. Alina stood atop the command center, watching as the Vrothians fled. "This isn't over," she said, her voice firm. "But we've proven something today. We've shown the galaxy that humans cannot be underestimated, and we will not stop until we've made sure of it." Mark stood beside her, looking out at the stars. "We've taken the first step towards something greater. This is just the beginning." And with that, humanity's true battle for survival had begun. The war had escalated beyond anything the humans could have imagined. With the Vrothian forces retreating, they still had the upper hand in terms of technology and military might. They could regroup, rebuild, and strike again. But the humans were not done. They had just begun to show the universe who they truly were. In every corner of Earth, humans were preparing for what was to come. The victory against the Vrothians was monumental, but it was only one battle in a long war. Alina and Mark knew that the true test was not in winning individual battles, but in making sure that the enemy could never return to Earth with the same intentions. They needed to ensure that the galaxy knew humanity was not to be trifled with. The momentary peace was interrupted by a chilling message that came from the far reaches of space. Another alien fleet, this time a different species, was advancing toward Earth. The humans had proven themselves capable of fighting, but now they would be tested even further. Alina gathered her commanders, including Mark, in a small conference room. The news had hit them hard, but there was no time to waste. "This is our moment to show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. If we let them think we're vulnerable, they'll come again. And they won't stop until we're gone," Alina said, her voice strong, but edged with the tension of what lay ahead. Mark nodded, eyes determined. "We've fought for this long. We're not going to back down now." In the meantime, all across Earth, humanity was rallying. No longer was it just a small group of survivors fighting for their lives. The entire planet was united with one purpose: to defend their home. But beyond just defense, they had a plan, and it was bold. The humans were not just preparing to survive. They were preparing to take the fight to the stars. In the Vrothian flagship, Zorith was incensed. He had led his fleet in an attempt to obliterate humanity, but now they had fled, leaving their ships in ruins. They had underestimated the resilience of humans and had paid a heavy price. He had never seen anything like this before, this determination, this drive for survival. "Rebuild. Regroup," he ordered, frustration evident in his tone. He refused to acknowledge the loss as a failure. "We will strike again, but this time, we'll be ready for them. No more surprises. The humans will be crushed." As the human fleet was being readied, a wave of tension spread across Earth. The knowledge that another war was approaching filled every soul with both fear and a strange sense of resolve. The fight was not over, and the humans knew that their fight would shape the future of the galaxy. They would not let themselves be crushed or wiped out. The universe would have to recognize them, not as weak, vulnerable creatures, but as a force of nature. Mark and Alina stood side by side, looking at the bustling operations around them. The unity of the people around them was palpable. "We've come so far," Alina said softly, "but this is just the beginning. We won't stop fighting until we're sure no one dares to challenge us again." Mark's eyes softened for a moment, but his determination remained unwavering. "This is our home, and no one will take it from us." At that moment, the stakes had become clear. The humans weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting for their future. They had proven that they could stand against the most powerful alien forces. Now it was time to show the galaxy that humanity could not be stopped, no matter who tried to destroy them. And they would make sure that their message was loud and clear across every corner of space. The challenge ahead was great, but the humans were prepared. With every passing day, their resolve grew stronger. The galaxy had underestimated them before, but now it was humanity's time to prove its place, and they would fight, tooth and nail, to ensure that the war would never reach their doorsteps again. The tide had shifted, and this time, the humans were in control. The war had taken a heavy toll on both sides, but it was the humans who emerged as the unexpected victors. The Vrothians, a race that had once viewed themselves as the ultimate conquerors, were now retreating, broken and defeated. The humans had shown them that their strength, determination, and unity could not be measured by the Vrothians' cruel standards. Mark and Alina stood side by side on the command bridge of the Earth's flagship, looking out over the galaxy. They were both exhausted, physically and emotionally, but the weight of the responsibility on their shoulders was far from over. The peace they had fought so hard for felt fleeting, temporary at best. The Vrothians' retreat didn't mean the war was over. It simply meant that the next challenge was on the horizon. The galaxy was vast, and the Vrothians weren't the only race that saw Earth as a valuable conquest. After all, Earth was more than just a planet. It was a symbol. Humanity had proven it was not to be underestimated. They had stood firm against an empire that had conquered planets across the galaxy, and in doing so, they had sent a message to every species that might think of attacking. But with the Vrothians fleeing, they had made a dangerous assumption. They thought the humans would rest, let their guard down. In the war room below deck, a new briefing was in progress. The analysts had intercepted communications between various alien factions, and the news wasn't good. Multiple species, seeing the vulnerability of the Vrothians, had decided to strike, and Earth would be their first target. "They're not waiting for us to recover," Alina said grimly as she surveyed the latest intel. "They think we're weakened by the war, but they don't understand what we're capable of." Mark stood beside her, his arms crossed over his chest, his jaw clenched. "We've proven ourselves once, but it won't be enough. They'll come for us, thinking we're easy prey. But we won't be caught off guard again. Not this time," Alina added, determination hardening her features. "We have to strike first. We can't let them regroup and hit us when we're vulnerable." She turned to the strategists gathered around the table. "Prepare the fleet. Every single one of us will fight back. This time, we're going on the offensive. We've got the advantage of surprise, and we can't waste it. The galaxy is going to see that humanity is not a species to be trifled with." The entire room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. It was clear now. Humanity would not just survive. They would dominate. But this would require every ounce of their strength and cunning. Mark spoke up after a long pause, his voice low but resolute. "We've fought to keep our home safe. Now we'll fight to make sure they never come back. Earth will no longer be a target. We will make sure that every species in this galaxy knows, if you come for us, you'll regret it." The battle lines were drawn, and humanity had already begun to prepare. The Vrothians, though they had retreated, were still out there, regrouping and nursing their wounds. But the humans had no intention of allowing them the time they needed to build up strength. It was time to take the fight to them, to make sure the Vrothians, and anyone else who dared threaten Earth, understood just how far the humans would go to protect their future. As the fleets began to mobilize, the first orders were given. The humans would not simply defend. They would go after the aggressors, the ones that believed they could use Earth as a stepping stone for their own expansion. With new weapons and strategies honed in the heat of the Vrothian conflict, the humans were now a far more dangerous force than they had ever been before. They were relentless, ruthless, and unified like never before. Days turned into weeks as the fleet prepared for its first offensive strike. As they ventured deeper into enemy territory, they encountered multiple alien ships, each one different from the Vrothians, but just as deadly. However, the humans had learned from their previous battles. They knew how to fight with precision, how to use their newfound unity and ingenuity to outwit their enemies. The first battle of the offensive campaign took place just outside a massive asteroid field that lay in the path of a fleet of warships. They had underestimated the humans, thinking they would be easy to ambush. But the humans had anticipated this move. The Vrothians and other alien factions had planned for an easy victory, but humanity was ready. They attacked swiftly, tearing through enemy lines with precision strikes. Every weapon, every strategy, was used with a singular goal in mind: to make sure humanity's message was heard loud and clear. The battle raged for hours, but in the end, humanity had emerged victorious once again. The alien forces, which had thought they could easily crush the humans, found themselves retreating. Their ships were damaged, their morale shattered. The humans had won, and the message had been sent: no one would defeat humanity again. But this victory, while important, was only the beginning. Mark and Elena knew that there were more battles ahead. There were still countless threats from other corners of the galaxy that wanted to see humanity destroyed. The war had never really ended, and the fight for survival would continue as long as their enemies remained. The humans were no longer the underdogs. They were no longer the vulnerable species on the edge of extinction. They had proven themselves a force to be reckoned with. And now they would defend their place in the galaxy, no matter the cost. With the offensive strike a success, humanity's resolve was solidified. The fight for Earth's survival had become a fight for its place in the stars. The humans had faced impossible odds, but they had come out on top. They would continue to fight, not just for their planet, but for their future, ensuring that no one would ever again challenge their place in the galaxy. The humans had made their mark, and the universe would never forget the price they paid to ensure their survival. The galaxy was about to know the true meaning of fear. The war had only just begun, and humanity's enemies learned that their assumptions about humans were completely wrong. They had believed that humanity was just another vulnerable species, destined to fall in line with the rest of the conquered worlds. However, they quickly found out that humans were a different breed. Their unity, resourcefulness, and adaptability made them a formidable force. As the humans continued their offensive, they were met with one alien faction after another. These species, many of which had dominated planets for centuries, believed that they could easily crush the humans like they had done with countless civilizations before. They thought that Earth was just a small, isolated planet with no real means of defense, but they were about to find out how mistaken they were. The humans weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting for their very identity. They weren't going to let anyone erase their existence. Every battle, every victory, was a declaration to the universe that humanity was not to be underestimated. Back at the Earth Command Center, Mark and Elena watched the latest battles unfold across the galaxy. Their fleet had pushed deep into enemy territory, and every strike they made sent a message. Humans were no longer the prey. They were the predators, and anyone who dared challenge them would pay the price. "It's almost too easy," Mark said, though his voice was tinged with concern. "We've been winning these battles faster than we thought possible. Are we underestimating them?" Elena shook her head, her expression hard. "We're not underestimating them. We're just showing them that they've been too arrogant. They've forgotten that every human who survives this war will be stronger than the last." As they prepared for the next assault, the command center was filled with a sense of unity and purpose. The humans had learned from every mistake, every setback. Their strategies had evolved, and their technology had improved by leaps and bounds. With each victory, they had grown more confident and more determined to finish what they had started. The next phase of their campaign took them into the heart of enemy territory, a massive cluster of planets controlled by a powerful alien warlord who had once thought that humanity was an easy target. His empire had crushed civilizations across the galaxy, but he had never faced an adversary like humanity. As the humans closed in on his stronghold, they encountered resistance unlike anything they had faced before. The warlord's fleet was vast and well-equipped, and his armies were ready for battle. But the humans were no longer the same. They had learned from the Vrothians, and they had studied their enemies. They knew how to counter every attack, every tactic, and every move. The first assault on the warlord's fleet was brutal. It was a collision of unstoppable forces. The alien warlord's ships were powerful, but they couldn't match the precision of humanity's strike. The humans hit them fast and hard, taking out key targets and disabling the warlord's ships before they even had time to retaliate. It was clear that humanity wasn't just surviving. They were thriving. The warlord, once full of pride and arrogance, watched as his fleet was torn apart by the human onslaught. His command center was in chaos as his soldiers scrambled to mount a defense. But it was too late. The humans had already broken through his defenses, and victory was all but assured. As the humans advanced toward the warlord's stronghold, the remaining alien forces tried to regroup and make a final stand. But the humans were relentless. They pushed forward with a single-minded determination to finish what they had started. No alien species would be allowed to threaten Earth again. The final battle was nothing short of legendary. The humans fought with everything they had, using every weapon at their disposal. They tore through the warlord's defenses, destroying his ships and overwhelming his forces. The warlord himself tried to flee, but he was captured by human forces and brought to the Earth Fleet's command center. Mark and Elena stood side by side as they watched the final moments unfold. The warlord, once a symbol of invincibility, now knelt before them in defeat. His empire had fallen, and the humans had proven once again that they were not to be underestimated. "You thought you could conquer us," Mark said, his voice calm but filled with authority. "But now you know, humanity cannot be stopped. We will never bow to anyone. We are the masters of our own destiny." The warlord said nothing. He had no words to offer, no excuses to make. He knew the truth now. The universe had learned the hard way that humanity was not a species to be conquered. The humans had fought for their survival and their future, and they had won. The galaxy would never forget the lesson they had learned. As Mark and Elena looked out over the battlefield, they knew that the war was far from over. There were still threats to humanity, and many more battles to be fought. But one thing was certain: humanity would never stop fighting. They would always rise, no matter how many enemies they faced, because they had something no one else had: unbreakable resolve. The universe had just learned its lesson. Humans were unstoppable, and those who dared challenge them would pay the price. The battle had finally ended, but the consequences of humanity's victory were still echoing throughout the galaxy. The defeat of the alien warlord and the fall of his empire had sent shockwaves through the cosmos. The galaxy's most feared species, the ones who thought they could erase humanity from existence, now had no choice but to bow to the undeniable truth: they had been wrong. Humans could not be defeated. Across the galaxy, the surviving alien factions were left to reflect on their mistakes. They had underestimated the resilience, intelligence, and unyielding spirit of humanity. The universe was watching as humanity, once considered weak and defenseless, had risen to become the most powerful force in existence. The fact that the warlord had fallen, along with his powerful fleet, only further solidified humanity's place at the top of the galactic hierarchy. But even in victory, humanity was far from complacent. They knew that this war was just one battle in a much larger struggle. There were still enemies lurking in the far reaches of space, rivals who had witnessed the collapse of the warlord's empire and were already preparing to strike. The humans understood that their survival depended not only on their military might, but on their ability to adapt and grow stronger. As the Earth fleet regrouped and began their assessment of the war, the leaders of humanity gathered in the war room. Mark and Elena, their trusted commanders, were at the forefront of the discussions. There was no time to rest. The future of humanity was at stake, and they had to remain vigilant. "We've won this war, but the galaxy's enemies won't just let us sit in peace," Elena said, her voice sharp and focused. "They're already making plans. We've shown them that we're not easy targets, but that only makes us more dangerous in their eyes." Mark nodded in agreement. "We need to be ready. The next challenge could come from anywhere, and we can't afford to be caught off guard. Our enemies are watching us. They saw what happened to the warlord. They know we can destroy them if they try to attack." The decision was made. Humanity would not only defend itself but strike first if necessary. No longer would they wait for others to make the first move. The humans had learned too much and grown too strong to let their enemies take another step without facing consequences. As the Earth fleet expanded and new alliances were forged, the message to the galaxy became clear: humans would not be subdued. They would lead the charge, taking the fight to any who dared threaten their people. The once feared species, who thought they could control humanity, would now have to reckon with the unstoppable force they had provoked. The final lesson was clear: never challenge humanity. It was a lesson no one would forget, a lesson that would be passed down through the stars for generations to come. The war had ended, but the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had shown them that the universe was not only the place for survival, but for conquest. They were no longer the hunted, they were the hunters, and every alien species who dared to challenge them would learn the hard way: humans were unstoppable.